is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 4 minutes after 10. Are we sure this is real? It's definite. You haven't just put it together on Word for Windows in order to get me to kind of commit the biggest faux pas live on air since, I don't know, the last one. It's definitely real, right? Yeah? But I just heard the woman saying to Nick that it wasn't going to happen. 99.9% certain that it... Steve Allen's been adamant for months that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were never going to get engaged. And if Steve Allen says something, then, well, I, for one, listen intently. I've just received news from Clarence House that His Royal Highness Prince Henry of Wales and Ms. Meghan Markle are engaged to be married. His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales is delighted to announce the engagement of Prince Harry to Ms. Meghan Markle. I've got a contact number as well, but I presume I'm not supposed to ring that out. That's just for the journalists who may want to make contact with the press office. The couple will live, for those of you who care about such things, in a Nottingham cottage, which sits, I'm told, in the grounds of Kensington Palace. What do you want to do, guys? Seriously. I'd quite like to talk about this, but not necessarily from a polarity perspective or a perspective of polarity. I'd just like to have a chat about it. I quite like Prince Harry. The royal family seems to me to be going through a fascinating period, but I don't imagine there's been a decade since William conquered us that couldn't be described as, in some sense, fascinating. I genuinely don't know. Should we just swerve the Republicanism argument just for one day? No, I can't do that. Actually, if you want to make the Republican stuff, you can. If we were mates, well, we are mates. Let me rephrase that. If we were colleagues, I suppose in a sense we are colleagues, especially if you've got me on at work. If we were actually in person together today, rather than just me whispering sweet nothings into your ear, how would we conduct this conversation? Prince Harry has become engaged to a divorcee of, I think, is she of Asian extraction? Has she got? I think she's mixed race. So a mixed race divorcee. Imagine 20 years ago, something like that happening. And even his mum, of course, felt that she couldn't go public with some of her relationships that may have spoken to similar statistics as that. It doesn't seem to me to be a big deal at all, but we do have a slight upsurge in racism in the country at the moment. No one has been less happy than I have to see my prediction that it would soon be directed at the Irish come dizzyingly and definitively true. So some people presumably are going to be in a huff about the fact that is he about fifth in line to the throne now or something like that, and he's marrying a woman of colour. I can't believe I have to say that out loud anymore. No, James, please don't. There are more important things to be talking about. And who will be paying for the wedding? Poor people. Well, I guess sort of in a sense you could say that. If you, look, I'm going to leave this one entirely up to you, okay? I'm perfectly comfortable turning on a sixpence and changing the topics that we were intending to talk about as a direct result of something that's happened in the last news bulletin. It's one of the many benefits of conducting a programme that generally steers clear of guests booked just to fill slots and just to fill space, as it were. It means that we can move on a sixpence, we can change our mind in the blink of an eye. But I find royal phone-ins historically quite tricky. If you've been kind enough to listen to this programme for a while, you probably will know why. It's because I don't know quite where they go. The big questions, I suppose, involve things like abdication and abolition, should the Queen step aside for Prince Charles, and they're very nebulous, very theoretical. Prince Harry seems to me to be a force for good. I love the work that he's done in the context of mental health. Some of my friends who've had personal contact with him, particularly in that field, speak of him in the most glowing of terms. But I also think that we are using that British tradition of forelock tugging at the moment to undertake incredibly damaging policies. You just look at how we're sort of treating these pantomime posh people in politics as if they somehow have a God-given right to reign over us. And of course, when you glance at the royal family, we do routinely sing about their God-given right to reign over us. So there are all sorts of issues attendant upon this announcement. I just honestly don't know whether or not we have... well, look, I'll level with you. If I don't have anything interesting to say on a subject, I take a little bit of persuading that you would. So at 8 minutes after 10, give me a call now and try to be interesting about the royal family. Should we see what the texts and the tweets have to say? Okay? Please change the topic. James, Meghan's mother is African-American. Thanks for clearing that up. James, the royal family is boring. Harry's dad is married to a divorcee, so don't go there, says Odd J. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just interested in whether you're interested. This, on paper, is a recipe for a disastrous hour. Give me a call if you're interested. I'm not sure whether you will be or not. And it gives you a wonderful opportunity to get through to the programme if you struggled to in the past, or if you're, I'm a little bit frightened about having your opinions on political issues properly scrutinised. 0345 6060 973. They get married in spring 2018. I don't know a lot about her. I know that she's an actress. I know that she's been married before, but as Odd J reminded us in that text, so has Camilla Parker Bowles, and her husband is the actual heir to the throne. So I don't think the divorcee angle of it matters much. I don't think the ethnicity angle matters much to most normal, decent people, although, of course, it's abnormal, indecent people who seem to be in charge of a lot of the country's policies at the moment. And I don't know what it says about the royal family in general. So let's get the phone lines open. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. And do it like we work together. Seriously, do it like we work together, and we found ourselves sitting next to each other in the canteen at work, or sitting next to each other at the bus stop on the way to work, and we just start a conversation. I can't open a programme by saying, does anybody care? 0345 6060 973, because that would just be a little bit lazy. 10 minutes after 10 is the time. If you're just joining us, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales is delighted to announce the engagement of Prince Harry to Ms. Meghan Markle. What does it mean to you? That's what I want to know. What does it mean to you? And if you hit those numbers now, you will get through. I have to tell you, as Sean writes, who cares? I care. I've got to be honest with you. It's news, and it's also a huge part of our national pageant. But I have, in the years since sort of leaving school, I've managed to pursue a kind of... it makes it sound like there was something deliberate about it. I've had loads of... I've got friends who are posh, as you know, and I've got friends who are the opposite of posh. As you also know, some of them ring in. And there is still a mystique about the royal family that some of us find a little bit baffling. Think of fame, right? So if you have ever been in the same room as someone famous... I had a real breakthrough the other night. I was at a charity function, and the people who were bidding huge amounts of money for stuff would prompt the whole room to turn around. And that's an interesting feeling. Some people don't like it, some people love it. Usually it's celebrity or fame that gives you that cachet in a room full of people. Do you know what I mean? You'll notice if you've done a bit of telly, or if you've done a lot of telly, or if you're a pop star or an actor, you notice people pointing at you. You notice people whispering or saying, and then depending on who you are and who they are and how famous you may be and how much they may enjoy your work, they'll quite often come up to you and say hello and greet you with questions or compliments. But generally, super famous people get bothered less than mildly famous people. The super famous people just get pointed at and whispered about. And at this charity function the other night, it was fascinating to see that simply having the ability to spend £50,000 on an auction prize prompted an identical reaction in the room. I've never clocked that before. And that presumably is part of the reason why you do it. If you've made that kind of money and you are that successful, you quite enjoy the cachet that your spending power brings to you. Quite rightly too. I was in a room with Prince William not long ago. I was at the Pride of Britain Awards, and it's like a combination of all of the things that I've just described. There is the whispering, there is the reluctance to go up to him and say anything, well, partly because you probably get shot, but also because he's so famous, that he's so recognisable, he's so instantly known to everybody in a room that you don't feel any need to double-check that it is actually him. And you also then have this weird kind of deference that I find troubling. I don't like deference. I was very much raised to believe that my sister and I were as good as anybody else. And there are no kind of baubles, silver spoons or accidents of birth that render people fundamentally superior or inferior to each other. If you like, it's a very Christian doctrine, but it flies in the face of what the royal family represent. They represent the opposite of that. They represent deference, they represent entitlement, and they represent inherited privilege on a weapons grade scale. And it used to bother me. And then it didn't. And then it did again when my kids were born and became a little bit older and bought into all that kind of princess mythology that is punted by Disney and fairy tales and all that other kind of thing. Didn't keep me awake at night, but I kind of didn't like the idea of my daughters dreaming of being princesses. And my wife said, "They're 6, get over yourself." And I realised, as ever, she was right. and I was wrong. Now, 11 and 9, they're very different in their attitude to royalty and princesses, but a lot of grown-ups I know aren't. And the reason I'm going off on this one is because I think this is quite an interesting way into the conversation. What is the role of the royal family now in the 21st century? 0345 6060 973. And how do you personally greet news of Prince Harry's engagement and the various attendant issues therein? 14 minutes after 10 is the time, because this is where I'm leading you to. The social cachet of a visit from a prince or friendship with a member of the royal family seems to me to be pretty much the same as it was during Tudor times. The only difference is that you don't get your head chopped off if he decides he doesn't like you anymore. The desperation to get... Can I tell you this story? Yeah, I think I can. I knew a very, 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 very wealthy Greek woman many, many moons ago. And I'm talking top 10 rich people in the world, her husband. And she was utterly obsessed with becoming friends with Diana, Princess of Wales. This is why Prince Charles gets lent yachts. You can, any summer, you wonder where he is. He's almost certainly on a yacht that's been lent to him by a Greek billionaire. That's how he spends his summers. He doesn't have a yacht of his own anymore, so he borrows them off Greek billionaires. And they see the social cachet of this kind of connection with the royal family as being worth more, obviously, than whatever it costs to crew and sail a yacht around the Aegean Sea for 3 weeks in the middle of summer, which would be, close to $1 million, certainly hundreds of thousands of pounds. And you see it here as well. The weird notion that because this bloke was born in certain circumstances at a certain point in history, he somehow deserves our deference. I'd like to talk about that with the caveat that he seems like a really nice bloke, and he seems sometimes as uncomfortable with what I've just described as some of us are. Am I overcomplicating it? Am I raining on his... Well, it's up to you. If you want to ring me and just start cheering, singing God Save the Queen, you can. If you want to have a slightly more nuanced conversation, then you'll know this is probably the best place in British broadcasting for it. 0345 6060 973. And if no one rings me between now and 10:30, we'll crack on with the conversation about chicken shops that we were intending to have. Have I covered everything? Is that good? Jones the engineer is back in the house today after a hiatus of some months, so hopefully everything will go very smoothly and there won't be any snafus whatsoever on the technological sides of proceedings. Tell him the time, he just said in my ear. God, he's good. Nothing gets past you. It's like riding a bike, isn't it? 6 months out of the game and nothing's gone, nothing's forgotten. It's 10:16.
With James O'Brien.
Somewhere in the corner of this country, a dark, dark corner of this country, dark because the lights aren't on, not because it's unpleasant, somebody with a hearing problem thinks that Prince Harry is getting married to Angela Merkel. That would have just been the story to end all stories, wouldn't it? But he's not. He's getting married to Meghan Markle, which will probably distract a little from Brexit-related shenanigans for as long as the newspapers decide that we need distracting. But I would like to know, hand on heart, how you react to this news. 0345 6060 973. I think I got it wrong in the introduction, because I've got loads of texts and tweets coming in saying nobody cares. I think we should care. I want to know why you care. But I also want to know your response to a broader question about what the royal family really mean in this day and age. Let's start with Rebecca, who's in Wimbledon. I've got phone lines free, and I'm not remotely embarrassed to say I expect to have phone lines free until 11 o'clock, because I've never got the hang of royal phone-ins. Any other subject under the sun, I'll blow the switchboard to smithereens. Royals can't do it. So help me out on 0345 6060 973. Rebecca's in Wimbledon. Rebecca, what made you pick up the phone?
I guess, good morning, James.
Hello.
What made me pick up the phone, I guess, is that I'm hearing comments such as, like you're saying, I don't care, change the subject. And it always seems to get a bit touchy, I think, around the race part. And I'm mixed race. And I think what I find quite hypocritical is that there's lots of undertones you're hearing in the media at the moment. And I guess in conversation with people with regards Meghan's ethnicity. And it's, part of me doesn't find it surprising. I'm mixed race myself, Irish Nigerian. And whilst we're supposed to be living in
that's
this,
a mix.
Yes, it is.
Do you have family arguments about whose Guinness is better, the Irish stuff or the Nigerian stuff?
Oh, there's many an argument, all of great fun. But it's just it astounds me. We're living in the 21st century. This is not 1920s England, except we seem to be stuck there. And,
Well, this is good then, isn't it? Although I suppose the most obvious parallel, perhaps, is to remember how we all thought the election of Barack Obama as president of America marked the death of some strands of racism in America. Whereas, of course, what it did was infuriate racists so much they ended up electing a sex offender, self-confessed sex offender, I should add, for legal reasons.
Yes, no, it is quite a joke. But then we say that, but it didn't quite kill anything, did it? I think people just publicly or socially, found ways of just keeping their mouths shut on it. But
does it mean anything to you? I mean, I can't bear. I suppose we're allowed. It's not every day a prince of the realm gets engaged, so we can possibly break one of our golden rules. I don't do phone-ins where people are invited to ring in and tell us how bored they are by the story, or indeed how outraged they are. But does it matter on any meaningful level to you? This engagement, and the strangeness of it, a divorce. I mean, remember that his father married Diana, Princess of Wales. In part, at least, because just 4 decades ago, fewer than 4 decades ago, it was still a requirement that the Prince of Wales would have to marry a virgin.
Wow, we're still there. I mean, it matters to me as much as, Harry is the part of the royal family. It's not something that I massively take interest in, if I'm being honest.
No,
but
fine.
Him as a person, he seems, like you say, he's highly respected and seems like a decent guy. And I think, I had a lot of time for following Diana when she was alive and her 2 sons. I think on a personal level, as a fellow human being, I'd like to see him happy, as I would anyone else.
That's not a nice human reaction, but of course he's not anyone else. He's kind of the opposite. Line going a bit south there. I've got 2 phone lines free, but I imagine a lot of people are bringing in. Are just passing on their congratulations. Because, of course, it's a well-known fact that Prince Harry, Prince William, and quite often the Queen listen to this programme on a regular basis, so they will probably be tuning in to see what the public reaction is. I'm quite happy to pass on your thoughts and compliments. 10:24 is the time, 0345 6060973. Prince Philip can't stand it, apparently. 0345 6060973. John's in Billericay. John, your hotline to the palace. What would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello, John.
I'd like to wish Harry well, but I've got absolutely no interest in the royal family. And this is, coming from someone that served in the armed forces. So I know that people probably think that I should have an interest. But
do they? Do you think just because the Queen and Country line is still very much in the national lexicon, I've always presumed, perhaps incorrectly, that people, if they go into the armed forces for vocational reasons, it's more about their fellow citizens than it is about their monarch or their sovereign.
Yeah, family and friends.
Exactly.
I served to protect family and friends, not somebody I've never met in the royal family. And this is the thing. Like I said, I've never met any of the royal family. I did actually meet Prince Charles when he came and visited HMS Invincible in the late 90s.
I just need to pick you up on this, obviously. I'm not in full inquisitor mode today, but you did just utter the sentence. I've never actually met a member of the royal family, but I did actually meet Prince Charles.
I did, yeah, because just as I was saying, I've never met. I actually remembered I did meet him very briefly.
Very memorable.
In a passageway on HMS Invincible, and I thought, actually, he looks like a nice guy, really short, but looks like a nice guy. But the thing is...
He's not that short.
Well, I'm 6'4", so...
Well, everyone's short to you, John, for heaven's sake. Honestly, he's about 6 foot, the Prince.
Who, Prince Charles?
Yeah.
He must have just having a bad day that
Maybe
day.
it wasn't him. Maybe it wasn't Prince Charles. Maybe you just bumped into someone. You've been on the rum again.
It wouldn't surprise me. There's a lot of people on the aircraft.
Some big-eared short fella just walking past. John thought it was Prince Charles. You didn't bow, did you, mate? That would have freaked him right out.
We pretty wondered why I put to attention next to him. We wondered, why are you doing that to me? But I think the thing is that, I don't agree with inherited privilege. Something I just don't agree with. And I know that people say they bring in a lot of money to the country, but do they? I mean, no one actually ever sees money coming in, do they? We just hear things that are, put out there by...
Well, the argument is tourism, and you I suppose there's an argument there in terms of the changing in the guard and the pageantry. And look, I mean, since the pharaohs died, no one goes to Egypt to look at the pyramids anymore, John. So,
This is exactly it. This is it.
Colosseum in Rome is like a wasteland, mate, since Caesar snuffed it. There's nothing there at all.
People still go there. And this is the thing, if all of a sudden the Queen started to come out, greet the tourists and ask them about how their flight was and things like that, I can understand it. But all these people that come over here to see, pretty well-known, royal establishments, they come there to see that. Because you can't see them anyway. You're 100 foot away from the building. You don't just go in there and have a bimble around and sit down with the Queen.
Selfies.
Harry
No,
about
but
them.
this is what I do find interesting, and I'm trying to conduct this conversation in a respectful and affectionate way, even though people like you and I find what I'm about to describe at best a little bit discombobulating and at worst quite dangerous. But people do like... They like the kind of magic of it. They like the... You know, in Thailand, you can get locked up for denying that the king is a deity. And you still have that kind of... I'm going to call it forelock tugging because I can't think of another phrase to describe that sense that people know their place. You are born in a hierarchy and you'll jolly well stick to your slot. Otherwise, off with your head. And that's what you're objecting to, I think. And that's what I find very troubling.
And something that really winds me up is when people call me a subject. I'm not a subject, I'm just like you. I'm a free-born entity. Yes, I live in this wonderful land we live in, but I don't see myself as being subservient to anyone. Literally, if I met the Queen, I would greet her in the same way I'd greet anyone else. You know, shake her hand. She probably wouldn't want to shake my hand.
Would you bow? See, I don't know if I'd bow. This is a big problem for me. It's why I keep turning down my knighthood, because I don't know if I'd be able to go down on one knee to get it.
Maybe if she drops it on the floor, you'd have to go on your knees.
I'm struggling. Steve Allen gets on, he'll never get up again. Although I think he's ruled out his chances of getting a knighthood after swearing blind for the last 12 months that these two were never, ever, ever going to get engaged. John, onwards and upwards. And I like the fact that you mentioned your armed forces service, because I notice a lot of the usual suspects try to conflate the two and claim that somehow if you've been in the armed forces, then you must be a passionate advocate of the know your place school of thought that seems to be on the rise in Britain at the moment. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Allow me briefly to say that call is precisely what I was talking about. All right, now, not a gob on a stick and a punter on the phone line, but just two people looking at a story and having a bit of a chat about it. There's no real side to pick. I've given you some lines of inquiry that you might find interesting, but journalistically, even if you want to subscribe to the kind of man gets engaged to woman zippity-doo-dah, what a big deal school of thought, and I understand why you might want to do that, I don't think that the most listened to radio show in London at this time can actually steer away from this story. It's news driven, and if you want to talk about it, then this is the place to do so. 0345 6060 973. Not just in London, of course, up and down the country. I was just referring to where the listening figures. What should we say? Should we say the most listened to speech radio programme by people under the age of 54 at this time in this country, or something like that? Anyway, it's 10:30. 10:35 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. If you were to see some of the reported comments and attitudes of, for example, the Queen Mother, Prince Harry's great-grandmother, you probably would consider the fact that he is now engaged to be married to a mixed-raced divorcee to be astonishing. But I don't think, even with the increasing popularity of old-fashioned racism in Britain at the moment, I don't think, apart from I've seen a few on Twitter, but I don't think that's going to be a big deal for most Brits, is it? The fact that she's mixed race, or indeed divorced. So what is a big deal about a young man in his 30s getting engaged to a slightly older woman? I don't know. I want you to tell me. And what role does the royal family play in your life? 0345 6060 973, or indeed in your view for modern Britain. I've always liked the cut of the fella's jib, but I'm desperately uncomfortable with the kind of entrenchment of deference and inherited privilege that he represents. I did mention to you, however, that friends of mine involved in mental health campaigning in particular hold him in the very highest esteem, and frankly that's good enough for me. One of those friends is the Daily Telegraph columnist Bryony Gordon, who has... Well, I don't know quite how to put this, Bryony. I don't know if you're allowed to tell me the truth or if you've signed some sort of official Secrets Act about your interactions with him, but whenever I've seen you photographed in the company of Prince Harry, you seem to have sort of... well, not to put too fine a point to it, you seem to have grabbed him.
Well, no, you know, yeah, that's it. I grab onto him and never let him go. No. He's a really down-to-earth guy. I mean, astonishingly so, given everything that he has been through.
Yes.
So whenever we meet, which isn't that often, but has been quite a few times this year, we do have a hug.
And that's nice. That speaks of a kind of very, very different worldview, attitude, humanity from previous generations, most notably his father. But tell me on a more serious note about the support he's offered to you with your mental health campaigning, and of course with his sister-in-law and his brother. They've set up their own charity as well. And this seems to be the real deal. This isn't, you know, sometimes one wonders whether very lucky people do charity work as a kind of sop to their consciences, but this seems to be a labour of love, a proper project.
Yeah, so they launched Heads Together last year, which was a campaign to support 8 different mental health charities around the country and basically get the conversation started about mental health. And I got involved in that. I ran the marathon for them in April, and I also then interviewed Prince Harry about his own mental health just before the marathon, and it was really kind of incredible. I think he really spoke about the therapy he'd had after his mother died,
or a long time after his mother died. He spoke very powerfully. Go on.
Quite recently.
Yes.
So about 2 years ago, he'd found himself in total chaos, sort of panicking about having to do public appearances, and it was kind of amazing to hear. But of course, then what happened was you had all the people going old-fashioned types, perhaps the kind of racist that you mentioned before, saying, "Oh, these are the place of a royal is to maintain a stiff upper lip."
Yeah, shut up about your mental health issues.
And my view is that perhaps that was the role of a royal when the biggest killer of men in this country was the Nazis. Mm-hmm. But now the biggest killer of men in this country is suicide. It was absolutely, it was a great thing that he did. It was a kind of public duty, and he didn't have to come out and talk about his mental health. And I don't even think he knew he was going to when we sat down in that room. Certainly his PR people didn't. So it was a great thing. It broke down barriers. And honestly, James, I still get messages every week from people saying how much that interview helped them, because if he could talk about it, they could too. Absolutely,
and of course ex-military as well being an area of particular concern for these kind of issues and these kind of illnesses. This isn't really your field of expertise, Bryony, but you're a newspaper columnist, so you should be able to offer up an opinion on anything. Do we know why he hasn't kind of gone down the traditional route of marrying the second daughter of the Duke of Devonshire or something like that, and has gone completely out of the game? Do you think that's significant, or just the fickle finger of Cupid pointing at him and her?
I think it's just love, isn't it?
No.
Love. It's just
Shut up.
The love wave. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's great that he's marrying a mixed race American divorcee, don't you?
Yes, I do. I think it's wonderful. I don't know how significant it is in the 21st century that her background is the polar opposite of what you'd routinely expect a prince to get engaged to.
But everything they do is, the polar opposite of what they're expected to do. And I think that, I mean that in the best way possible.
Of course.
And I think he's probably looking forward to now. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak.
Do you think you'll get invited to the wedding?
I'm literally standing by my door waiting for the...
I don't think you should go out for a while. I really don't. Bryony Gordon, fantastic stuff. You can read her columns in The Telegraph and indeed her 2 books published thus far, Mad Girl, I beg your pardon, and The Wrong Knickers. Both absolutely brilliant for rather different reasons. 10:41 is the time. On another occasion, I'll tell you about the time my wife and I were supposed to be looking after Bryony at the Edinburgh Festival and lost her. But that's not for now. Johnny is in Exeter to talk to us about this news. Johnny, I'm in this awful position, mate, of essentially pretending that I'm not asking every caller, do you care? Well, actually, under whatever question I come out with now, I'm really just saying, do you care? Do you care?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. What
they did sort of 500 years ago, that's for sure.
No, I guess not. Well, you don't do it on pain of death anymore, do you?
No, exactly. We have the freedom to care or not, I suppose.
Yes, nicely put.
But I think that if we look at their practicality, their usefulness, their utility. There you go, to our political system. I mean, they're not very useful, and a lot of people judge them as an institution on their utility. So they're not directly and immediately useful in the sense that you could argue that they're our public relations department. If the United Kingdom is a company.
They're part of it, aren't they? They're part of our international public relations pageantry. Yeah. But I never know how much of a draw that is. If the royal family ended tomorrow, would the queue of Americans at Windsor Castle disappear as well? I suspect it wouldn't,
Well, I think we could pull it off. Listen, if we can pull off Brexit... Sorry, I know you said you didn't want to talk about it.
Johnny! can't,
We're going
mate.
to do it. I don't want us to have to do it, but we're going to do it.
It's 10:42. That's a new record, and you've blown it. It's doing so
but you
well.
said, without you mentioning it, you didn't say that I couldn't.
Yeah, but it's a show, isn't it? We're all making the same programme together. I kind of take it as read that if we're not going to mention Brexit, you're going to join in, not come and pop my balloon before the 10:45.
You know,
It's too late now, pal. You've blown it. 10:42. Write that down. 42 minutes. It's a new record, and it was Johnny's fault that we blew it. But you're about to say if we can pull off something like that, which of course we haven't yet.
yeah.
Then
if we could pull off something like that, which we haven't yet, okay, but something like that, we won't mention that thing.
yes.
If we can pull off something like that, then we would be okay. I think if we if we tomorrow became a federal state or republic or whatever non-constitutional monarchy we are, then we could do it. But
Don't get cross about it. Did you ever get cross about it? The royal family? I used to get a bit
I
cross.
get cross about the deference.
Do
I
you?
get cross about the deference, but I get cross about the deference that people give X Factor contestants. So
Yes.
do you know what I mean?
Of course I do. That's what I meant when I was talking about when you're in a room and people turn around to look at someone, and it's a nice feeling if you like that sort of thing. Not everybody does, but it is odd what qualifies you to be the person everybody turns around and looks at. I realised this the other night when we were just turning around to look at people who'd bid very generously, tens of thousands of pounds for like a year's salary for most of us, or for many of us, and they'd drop it on an auction lot for charity, which was great. But the way people looked at them fascinated me. I'm like Johnny on that, and the same with people who've just done a bit of karaoke on the telly. Prince Harry seems to be a nice bloke. I prefer him to his brother. It's a very personal view. I've never met either of them, but he just seems to be someone that you'd probably rather go on the lash with. 10:44 is the time. Johnny, thank you. John's in Putney. John, what do you think? What's going on? Do you care? Where are we?
I care and I don't. I mean, I have to declare an interest. I'm a Republican. I wrote a critical book on royal finance, so I mean, I have a bit of a thing about it. But
What was the book called?
Overall, Living Off the State.
I like it.
Critical Guide to UK Rural Finance.
There we go. Carry on.
Yeah. And thank you. And basically, I think what we can see here is, once again, as before, there's a kind of an artificially induced state of euphoria that I think people are supposed to buy into, or certainly strongly invited to buy into. And I think it's an infantilizing process, because I think it's really time we sort of took ownership of the state in the way that we don't have. And I think whilst the royals now don't have much real power, they have a terrific amount of influence and weight in kind of, as you were saying, in sort of PR terms. I mean, they are the nation's meet and greet team, and they do convey a lot of what we feel and sense about ourselves and our kind of place in the world. And I think it's time we really moved on from the old version, and we're still in the old version. We're in a kind of newish version of it, but it still hasn't. We really still haven't moved on. And I think it's high time we do.
I never know. I mean, how do we take the temperature of the nation? Because there's nothing wrong with a bit of a party. I don't think this one comes with a day off, does it? It doesn't come with a bank holiday when the spare gets spliced. But it's hard to call. Can I run something by you and you tell me if I'm nuts or not?
Yeah.
Because when I look at Brexit and I try and understand it, and I see this weird emotional nativism that doesn't brook much rational analysis, and that's not an offence. People now aren't even pretending that it does. They're saying it's got nothing to do with economics or anything. It's just Is that how you get people to go to wars that they don't really understand? Is that a large part of the royal family's appeal, and this weird faux patriotism that's very commonplace in the country at the moment?
Yeah, I think the British carry a lot of baggage with them.
Yes.
We still haven't got over where we were in the world. And part of, the things, the word we weren't supposed to mention today, the B word,
You can mention it now. Johnny's blown it for everybody else. It's all bets are off. Yeah, cheers, Johnny.
Essentially, the British still haven't got over who they are in the world and where they are. They still have an exaggerated sense of their importance. We're actually a deficit-laden country who still really don't know where we're going. And we've actually chosen...
And we think we're still Victorian Empire builders.
We really, really do.
Oh, Lord.
And I think for that reason, I think it's a bit sad. I think there's one thing that struck me, and obviously, with a vested interest in the financial side of it, it was announced that they would go and live in Kensington Palace. Well, that's really sweet, except you've got to remember that it's a state-owned property. They've jumped a queue. way advanced of an awful lot of other people.
Yes.
Other people live there on exceedingly good deals. You know,
And they're not under most measures going to be among the nation's neediest.
No, of course not. I mean, you've got to remember that Harry and William were left 17 million when they hit 30 by their mother, let alone the money that they get to run their office and whatever through their father, who got 21 million last year from the Duchy of Cornwall. These people aren't on the skids by any means, and yet they are doing awfully well out of the system, and it's somehow, through this sort of warm, cuddly feeling...
We take our eye off the ball.
They kind of elide their way into the system and the established setup, albeit in a slightly new guise. And I don't mind who they are. I don't mind what they do.
You're brilliant. No, you're absolutely right. Separating the individuals from the institution, which is probably the first step towards rendering the institution redundant. But of course, most people don't head off in that direction. And I'm glad you've reminded us about the money, because it is all a little bit. I'm not going to have a pop at anyone on the day that they've announced their engagement. But John's dead right, you know. The author of Living Off the State, an examination of the royal family's finances. Do you know, if they'd been born poor and they had the kind of dysfunction in their family that they have, with all the sort of divorces and the problems and the dysfunction, they'd be on the Jeremy Kyle show, not living in palaces.
This is LBC.
Time, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we greet with a mixture of responses. News at 10 o'clock this morning that Prince Harry, as was widely expected by everybody. He just came into the studio, actually, to drop something off for me. Everybody except Steve Allen, who has been adamant for months that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle would never, ever get engaged. You can, of course, hear Steve's desperate attempt to dig himself out of this humiliating hole live on LBC from 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. Don't miss it. 10:53 is the time. Robert Jobson is the royal editor at the Evening Standard, author of many books on the royal family. Another old mucker of mine, but more pertinently today, somebody who has been following the royal family for more years than many of my listeners have been alive. We knew this was going to happen, Jobbo, didn't we? It's just the kind of...
We did. I mean, yeah, we did, James. I mean, the fact was there was a big buzz around last Thursday when it was expected, actually, that the announcement would happen. But the reality of it is there are obviously some I's and T's to be crossed and dotted. So they were sorted out. I saw somebody coming out of the Kensington Palace, a high-level courtier, the other week, and it was clear that they were there for that specific reason. So, yeah, we did expect it. It's been coming, and it's good, happy news.
And what sort of immersion training course does Meghan Markle go on now, or perhaps has already been embarked upon? Even for somebody who's famous in the realms of show business, this is going to be the mother of all culture shocks for her.
Well, I think she's quite accomplished. I mean, she's been with Harry for 18 months or so she understands the media side of things. She's an actress, she's accomplished at that, so I'm sure she'll be able to deal with some of the issues. But no, there won't be a particular course or anything like that from the courtiers. She'll learn on the job, I would think. Take Prince Harry's lead. She's quite natural like him, and I think that they will work together as a good partnership. That's effectively what's going to happen, but there won't be any particular training course or anything like that.
And when we
have to get used to having police protection with her from the Protection Command, well, that'll be quite different, I think, for someone who's had freedom. But again, she's been around Harry for quite a while, so she'll probably get used to that quite quickly too.
On a sort of slightly less cheerful note, presumably the Fourth Estate, the Fleet Street's Great and the Good and indeed the American media as well, have been through her backstory, her CV, her family tree with a fine-tooth comb. There have been a few rumblings, but how significant is that? Would the royal family still exercise almost a power of veto over somebody whose background was questionable?
Well, I think if there had been anything, extraordinary, I don't suppose Harry would have probably been involved with her. But no, I don't suppose they would have. Obviously, there would have been checks along the way in terms of security. But no, I don't think that there's anything to worry about. It's not like the ancient days, which even with Princess Diana seemed ridiculous. What was going on then? No, I don't think there's been an issue. She's a 36-year-old. American actress who's been married before. She's, a lovely girl, and I'm sure that they'll be happy together.
Final question. When our paths first crossed about 20 years ago at the Daily Express, if it had been announced that he's the spare, he was second in line to the throne not long ago, before the arrival of Prince George, or third, of course, after his brother. A mixed-race divorcee marrying into the royal family. It does speak of progress of sorts, doesn't it?
Thank goodness, yeah. I mean, it does. It obviously speaks of progress. I think that what's important here is that two people love each other, they want to get married, and it doesn't really about their backgrounds or their ethnicity. That's the most important thing, that it's for love. And years ago, of course, royal marriages were for countries and for organising alliances, and now they're for love. So that has to be progress.
Onwards and upwards. I'm sure you've got a deadline screaming in the background, Robert Jobson, and we look forward to reading your words in the Evening Standard later. If you're not in London, you can't get a paper copy, then of course it will also be online. Many thanks. I wonder if there's a quick reissue in the offing as well of Harry's War, The True Story of the Soldier Prince, which is one of Jobson's books. Louise is in Leytonstone. Louise, what made you pick up the phone?
I picked up the phone because what Harry means to me, I think he challenges the taboos around mental health. He challenges the taboos around ethnicity and marriage. I don't know why we're talking about it. We never talked about Will's marrying a white British woman, Kate. So
no, but that's because every other male member of the royal family in history had also married a white woman, and if not British, then just foreign princesses and stuff. So it is. I mean, that's why I use the word progress. I don't want to over-egg it, even though some people are. I think it's more the case that this is nice, isn't it? Look, it's the 21st century. Even if we are going backwards in other areas of life, at least Prince Harry seems to have his eye on the future.
Yeah, and I think it's great. Some parts of me think, because when he first met her and all this talk about ethnicity, and I was just thinking, what the bit has ethnicity got to do with their relationship? We've moved on now with 2017, so I applaud everybody that has spoken on your show about, why is it important. I think Harry's so relevant.
He seems to be. I like you. Yeah, I like you. I don't want to over-egg it, but there is just a general sense of glow. Can I tell you a funny thing, Louise? There's a rather splendid website called joe.co.uk who I've been doing some work with, and they've just published their coverage of this story. They say, breaking news, successful actress Meghan Markle to wed former soldier. So timely reminder, isn't it, of what the world might look like from the other end of the telescope. So congratulations to Prince Harry. Would I like to live in a world where an accident of birth didn't deliver fame and fortune on an international scale, but instead it relied on effort and merit? Yes, I would. But as long as I live in a world where an accident of birth can deliver fame and fortune on an international scale, then it seems to me that Prince Harry is the possessor of shoulders on which it sits rather more comfortably than it does for his father or indeed any of his uncles. 10:59 on both sides. 10:59 is the time, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. The plan was at 10 o'clock this morning, before Prince Harry elected to wait for the start of this programme before making his massive announcement.